Okay, you know those speakers that stand up and say that they were just told like a half hour ago that they have to get up in front of the mic and say something? There's more chairs inside, please. If there's plenty of chairs. Well, that was me. Then I got a phone call from somebody and told me what to say. Then I got a phone call from Peggy and she told me what to say. But I decided I'm going to say what I want to say, so I'm not listening to anyone. So I just am here to introduce Peggy to some of you. I call her Peggy. And Amy, I'm going to apologize, but there is a saying that says that whatever you know, you learned in kindergarten. And for all of you that know that I was Peggy's teacher in kindergarten. So, who's she to say? And Amy, I'll share. I'll take credit. Peggy did color in the lines, and she did know her olive face. And maybe because she knew her olive face so well, this is what came out of it. What's interesting is that right before I left, my daughter called me on FaceTime, and she said, "Ma, you have to see this." And she shows me the Maamin book. She lives in Lakewood. Her son's school is having a dinner, and she opens up to the front page, and here it says something about Nesiva Satorah. And she said, "This is what they're giving out at the dinner." I said, "Oh my gosh, here I am, like I'm coming to talk about Peggy and the Maamin, and here my daughter's calling me that it's being given out on Wednesday in Lakewood." And then another thing with another family member of mine, my brother-in-law is the principal in Beis Mikra, and he calls up my husband and says, before Lag Bomer, and says something like, "Oh, did you hear something about this Maamin initiative? Something I heard, maybe, you know?" So like my husband's like laughing inside. "Do we know?" "Of course we know." So what ended up happening was on Lag Bomer in Monsey in Beis Mikra, my brother-in-law got my husband called Shlomi and Eretz Yisrael, and they got together and they got 650 children. All were saying Ani Maamin in the big courtyard with big speakers. And my brother-in-law explained the meaning of each one. They all said it, and then they all sat on the floor and they sang Ani Maamin, Lilu Nishmas Dovie. Now, a grandmother of one of the boys that was in the school lives 2 blocks away. She heard the voice of my brother-in-law explaining the Ani Maamins. She came to see it, and all she could do was cry. I think what Peggy and her family has done is made an awareness of words that we just sometimes when we daven, I'm not saying all of us, some of us just say the words, if you can see them. But we just say the words, but now we know the meaning, and it holds a very dear place in our hearts. And Peggy will tell you what she wants to tell you. Are you coming? I'm running out of words. Yes, she did color in the lines, and she's a very good girl, and I'm here to give her a mitzvah note. Oh, and there are books in there for sale when we're done.
Yes. No. Thank you, Hannah Dovie, for making me who I am today. Now you make me. I can hear,
but they can't hear you in the other room there.
Okay. I really wasn't nervous till now, but the pressure is on. Thank you all for coming tonight. I know is it working? Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for coming here tonight. I know it must have been difficult for some of you to come out tonight with your children, getting them to bed, giving supper, but it's for a good cause, and I really do appreciate it. Public speaking is certainly not my forte, but I feel that I owe it to the Montreal community to stand up here tonight. Al Takar Satov, for all of you for rallying behind my family a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, when we were at our lowest. Montreal, you are an incredible community, and I stand here humbly before all of you tonight to say thank you. You are amazing. So, no, there really is nothing like
in the whole world. Nothing like
there really is Montreal. We are a community. So please be kind and please do not judge. To have known Dovie is to have loved Dovie. He truly was larger than life in every sense of the word. He had a joie de vivre. He had a chias to him. He just, everything about him. He walked into a room and he lit up the room. You just wanted to be around him. He drew people to him. He was a magnet. Everybody just wanted to be Dovie's friend. Everybody wanted to be around him and to surround themselves with Dovie. To quote Dovie's friend, Dave Schachter, when Dovie did something, he did it 100% or 100%. He did it all or all. He never did anything halfway. That was who he was. He gave himself 110%. He didn't know how to do anything halfway. He put his entire body and soul into absolutely anything and everything he did, whether it was learning, whether it was going about doing a mitzvah, whether it was doing a chesed for somebody. That's who Dovie was. When he was in school, doing a prank, it was 110%. And he was a master at that. When he was learning, it was with his entire being. That's who Dovie was. Dovie lived 21 years short, but in his 21 years, he accomplished the world. Everything he was supposed to do, he did in that short time. Dovie had two very unique midos. One of them, which we won't really discuss tonight, was just his love for people. He just truly loved everybody. Whoever you ask about Dovie, they were his best friend. It didn't matter how old or young the person was, they were his best friend. The man in shul, Pandivachi, Mr. Ornstein, his best friend. The man was in his 90s. It was his best friend. I don't even think my son was 10 years old, but it was his best friend. And then his classmates, every single one was his best friend. They all rallied around him. His friends from Feigenbaum's, each and every one of them, his best friend. His friends in the mirror, his best friend. He had a knack for picking out those boys that they weren't feeling so great. He was able to pinpoint who was feeling a little bit low, and then he just picked them up. That's who Dovie was. And then his second unique point, he was truly a Baal Emunah. What does that mean? Who's a Baal Emunah? We don't talk like that about a 21-year-old boy, but that's who he was. With every fiber of his being, he truly believed with an absolute conviction that there was Hashem, that there was an Eibishter, and he said it hundreds of times. I don't understand it. I don't believe it with every fiber of my being, but he truly believed it. He breathed it with everything that he was. He understood it. I don't know what that means. I'm a work in progress, but that's who he was. On our recent trip to Eretz Yisrael, we went to an Adam Gadol. We needed clarity. We needed answers. We do understand that no one has a crystal ball and no one can give us exact answers because no one has the answers. If we had the answers, Mashiach would be here. But we asked, why? Why us? Why Dovie? And this Adam Gadol said very clearly to us, if Dovie's neshama had not been ready, if Dovie's neshama would not have believed with absolute certainty that his tafkid had been done, that his neshama would not have been ready and believed that his tafkid was done and that he believed that Hashem wanted his neshama back and that he was ready with absolute certainty, Hashem would not have been able to take him. But he was such a Baal Maamin, he was such a Baal Emunah, that he knew, his neshama knew it was time. And that is why he was one of the 45 Kedoshim. Do I believe it? Do I understand it? No, I really don't. I'm not about Maamin. I'm not such a Balamuna like that. My husband, with 100% certainty, it's part of his DNA, it's part of his genetic makeup. It comes naturally to him. For example, we have a story, and we say it all the time. Dovie had a bike. He had a bike in Eretz Yisrael, an electric bike. And everyone knows in Eretz Yisrael, when you have a bike, you want to keep your bike, you lock it up. Because if you don't lock up that bike, you will not see it the next morning. But every night, Dovie went up to his dira, and he left his bike unlocked. And his friend said, Dovie, you're crazy. And he says, don't worry. I just wants me to get to yeshiva, that bike is going to be waiting for me. Sure enough, every single morning, that bike was waiting for him. He never locked his bike. After he was nifter, my son Tzvi inherited the bike. He left it in Machal, outside his apartment, locked. And one morning, he came down, the lock was broken, and the bike was gone. He was so angry, so he takes a picture, and he puts it on the WhatsApp group of my family, and he writes, bike is gone. And his brother writes, bro, you had no faith. And that was his answer. And he was right. It was gone. There was no more bike. And then another classic Dovie story. He was walking with his friends, and this Yerushalmi guy waves to him. So Dovie waved back. His friend said, who is that? I have no idea. So why is he waving to you? He has my credit card. He has a credit card. He needed to buy Shabbos, and he didn't have enough money. So I gave him my credit card. Dovie, are you out of your mind? He's going to use your credit card. Who knows what he's going to put on it? Well, if he needs to put something on it, I'll put what he needs on it, and then it'll get paid. How are you going to pay your credit card? At the end of the month, whatever needs to get paid will get paid. He had stocks, he had his little business dealings, and at the end of every month, somehow, that credit card bill got paid. Some months, we paid it. Most months, I have to say, most months, we did not pay it. Once or twice, we got bills, we yelled, Dovie. But most months, we really did not pay it. He really believed, and he really knew that Hashem would take care of him. And he did, because it was part of who he was. He really believed, and he knew that Hashem would take care of him. And in turn, he did. So why is this Ani Maamin campaign that my husband started, this initiative, so successful? First of all, it's Lila Nishmas, my son Dovie, who truly believes with every fiber of his being in Ani Maamin. And my husband, too, believes with every fiber of his being. He breathes Ani Maamin. When my son was nifter, I questioned, I screamed, but my husband did it. He said, Ani Maamin, I believe this is what Hashem wanted. How can you deny someone who says Ani Maamin? How can you question it? Of course you're going to go along with him, and you're going to follow in his lead and say Ani Maamin. It's part of who he is. It's part of his DNA. So you have no choice but to follow along. Like I said, for some people, it's as natural as the air they breathe. For others, they work on it. But when you hear my husband talk about it, you can't question it. But like I said before, I, like many of you, I'm a work in progress. And that's why we are all here tonight to listen to Mrs. Elias give us words of chizuk. And hopefully that'll help us grow and hopefully help us say our Ani Maamin and really work on our belief and have absolute conviction in Hashem.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, I've been asked to give some words of chizuk. I just want to say with that the Maamin initiative, when the first began, it began in the Sifta, and began with Unbroken with a suggestion to say it. They asked my son, Rabbi Akiva, to do it, and it was recorded, and it's since turned into a sefer that in the past week when it first came out, article put out 5,000. It just now went into a second printing of 2,000. Schools are ordering 800, 500, 300 to give out at graduations in all different places. And I just feel, just listening to Amy, to the grandmother here, there is a very deep bond that has happened between the Elias and the Korfeld Steinmetz family that is a Shemesh V'Zaycha Tmi Mashiach together. And that includes everybody, but we have a special bond. Okay, so I'm here to deliver some words of chizuk, and the title here is Unbroken Faith, and moving forward from Lag BaOmer. But if you allow me, I want to go backwards before I go forward. Lag BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of the Omer, is part of the Omer. When Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, Kadosh Baruch Hu told them, "You're going to be serving me, coming to Har Sinai, receiving Torah." They were told to count and anticipate the 49 days and arriving at Har Sinai, receiving Torah. For all 40 years that we were in the desert, Klal Yisrael counted Sfiras Omer from Pesach until Shavuos. And then we entered Eretz Yisrael. It was 500 years from the time we entered Eretz Yisrael until the Binyan Bayis Rishon. And for every Pesach until Shavuos, the days were counted, the weeks were counted. And then the Beis HaMikdash, the first one was built, it stood for 410 years. And again, from Pesach to Shavuos, obviously, to Deraisa, Mitzvah say Deraisa, we counted Sfiras Omer. Then came 70 years of Galus, which was Persia, which was Iran and Iraq, which went to first Iraq, then Iran, Babel, Paras. And the story of Purim happens there. And then there was 420 years with second Beis HaMikdash, and the middle of second Beis HaMikdash was Hanukkah. And all those Pesachs and all those countings to Shavuos were the greatest, most exciting time that Klal Yisrael had. Even when the story of Purim happened, where Zeras Haman came out on the beginning of Pesach to annihilate Chalil the Yidden Purim time in Adar, that Pesach we counted, and there was no Avelos. Not then. And when the Greeks invaded Eretz Yisrael, and they created a servitude and a threat to Klal Yisrael, again we counted Sfira, and again it was not a sad time. Counting from being freed physically from Mitzrayim, from the Shiva, from the slavery, anticipating Matan Torah, receiving Torah, becoming Am HaNivchar, anticipating Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad. It's almost like coming off a grandchild's chasana, so it's like an engagement to a chasana. Those days are counted and anticipated. And so too, for so many years, over 1,000 years, from Pesach until Shavuos, yes, there was a Lamed Gimel BaOmer and a Lamed Daled BaOmer, Lamed Hey. There also was a 1 and 2 and 3 in the Omer. It was a fantastic time. It was a very, very exciting time for Klal Yisrael. So when did this all flip? When did we have to learn to go forward from Lag BaOmer? There's no need to go forward. It was just one of those days in the Omer where growth was happening over all 49 days. About 2,000 years ago, when the Romans invaded Eretz Yisrael, and we know about Galus Edom, was sent into exile. At that time, Rabbi Akiva lived at that time. We know that he done the Asarugei Malchus, was tortured by the Romans. But Rabbi Akiva lived in Eretz Yisrael at the time of the Romans. Rabbi Akiva, let's just pause for a second and say who he was. Rabbi Akiva came from Gerim, and his lineage were non-Jews. Not to put down, that's a shevach of where he came, where he grew to be. But it's not a start. It's not sitting on your Zadie's lap and getting all the information you want to know ahead of time before you even get to Cheder. He was very, very poor. In fact, before those years of being poor and working for Kalba Savur, Rabbi Akiva actually didn't like Talmidei Chachamim. It's recorded that he'd want to run after them and actually bite them and hurt them. He was coming from a different place. This wasn't a place of respect and glory for Talmidei Chachamim. That's not where he originated from. And when he worked as a poor shepherd boy for Kalba Savua, you all know the story that Rachel, Kalba Savua's daughter, saw potential in him. And she decided that she would like to marry him and let that potential come forth. And in the beginning of that marriage, he went to Cheder with little children. They didn't have like special resource rooms where the 40-year-olds called out to get special attention. He was sat on a seat in one of those very basic early classes. And Rachel's father, Kaba Savua, was so rich, he's called Kaba Savua because anyone who came in hungry as a dog, as a Kaba, left Savua very satisfied. One of the most rich people at the time of the Churban. And he so disowned them that they had no place to sleep that first year they were married, that winter. They actually slept in a barn where there was hay. And in the morning, he would pick the hay off the top of her head from what was a straw bed that they had slept on. And he promised her, he said, one day you're going to see. I'm going to buy you a tiara. I'm going to buy you a gorgeous crown like Kala's wear. But it's going to be Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. It's not going to be those diamonds and those pearls. It's going to be Yerushalayim Shel Zahav tiara. And the Gemara says there were other great rabbis whose wives were jealous. That's not for now. He eventually did give her that. But the beginning of Rabbi Akiva was rough and tough. And Rachel, his Ezer Kenegdo, let him go off to learn, and she believed in him. And he learned what he could learn locally. And then he went up to the north of Eretz Yisrael, and he continued learning there for 12 years and then 12 years again. And finally he came back with Talmidim, so many Talmidim he came back with. And he was applauded, and he was revered for what he gave to Klal Yisrael. We all know when he came back, and they all came along with him. Everybody came out to greet them. And Kalba Savua, the rich man, came out also. And there in the audience, in the crowd, was a poor bedraggled lady. And she tried to make her way forward, and his Talmidim pushed her back. And he said, 1 second. And he let her come forward and said, Shali v'shalachem, what's mine and what's yours, the Torah that's mine and yours, that tremendous, vast amount of Torah we succeeded in accomplishing. Shalahu belongs to her. The success is all hers, belongs to her. And then, after 1,000+ years of glorious Pesach to Shavuos, counting and counting, anticipating Matan Torah, tragedy struck. But only during these days, between Pesach and Shavuos. Tragedy struck between Pesach and Shavuos, and Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim died, one by one by one. 24,000 Talmidim died. I was just thinking, and not to compare Chalila, of all the schools in Montreal where all our children go, and Makamis of Torah. I don't know if we have 24,000 Talmidim in the city here. And they all were lost. They all were lost. And then one day, during Sfiras Omer, on the 33rd day of Lag BaOmer, they stopped dying. And so it became a day to rejoice. But the Pri Chadash says, what was the rejoicing? There wasn't a single Talmud left to live. All his Talmidim had died. So they stopped dying. Okay. But they all died. So when we celebrate, they all died. What's there to celebrate when every single one is not here? And the Pri Chadash says what they were celebrating was our title for tonight, the ability to go forward. Rabbi Akiva could pick himself up and go forward. That's what's being celebrated. It wasn't human for a man who came from such a background, had forged ahead with such Mesiras Nefesh, had lost it all, should have turned to the Abish and said, Ribono Shel Olam, is there a story like mine? How can we celebrate Lag BaOmer? We're so excited. We're so thrilled. When Sekra Baisa, all the Talmidim died. There was nobody around. What you're really celebrating, not that Talmidim stopped dying, there was no one left. Rabbi Akiva was able to pick up. You know, Seder time, when you sit and you go through the Haggadah, maybe you're in the kitchen checking the food, whatever, but this part there, it's not the fun part, where it says, when there was Subim in Bnei Brak, when they're sitting in Bnei Brak and talking to different Torah. Why were the Chachamim in Bnei Brak? The Churban that was happening, it was the Romans. It was the end of the Bayis Sheni. And the Romans were there. The Talmidei Chachamim, the people that sat and learned Torah, and sought to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was such a churban, they didn't know how to make a night of Seder, a night of Geula, to be one of redemption and joy in going forward. So they packed up and went to Bnei Brak, where Rabbi Akiva was. That's where they went. They said they were Subim in Bnei Brak. They were sitting in Bnei Brak and learning because went to Rabbi Akiva. There's Rabbi Akiva, you're the person to take us and make us feel a night of Geula, a night of Seder night in Yetzias Mitzrayim that we can't feel because we're sitting here by the Churban. We know the famous story of Rabbi Akiva. When the Churban happened and the Beis HaMikdash, there were foxes that were staying in the Makam Mikdash. I think most people in the room here and the other room here, we've all been to Eretz Yisrael. The excitement of coming towards the Kaisel, if it's by Yom Tov and the Berachas Kohanim. Imagine Chalil V'Chasa, next time you go, you see foxes and animals roaming there. The waste of the animals roaming there, that'd be a Shrek. But the kaisel isn't even a wall of the Beis Hamikdash. It's the fence around the Beis Hamikdash complex. It's not even a wall of the Beis. It's actually the one that would be facing the Kodesh HaKodashim. That's not a wall of the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Akiva sees the Makam HaMikdash, where you couldn't come unless you were tahar to come, where Kabbalas, where the singing, where so much glory was there. The 10 Nisim that are mentioned in Pirkei Avos, the wonderful things of Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the other Gedolim stand there and cry, Shualim Hilchuva, what's going on here? How desecrated, how horrific this scene is. And Akiva smiled, and they said, Akiva, what are you smiling about? He says, because there was a nevuah that it would be Shualim Hilchuva. There was a nevuah that there'd be fox that would be going on the Harabayas. But Zechariah also had a nevuah. Yeshvu Zekanim Zekanos B'Chovos Ha'ir. And the city will be filled, Yeladim v'Yelados B'Sachakim. I thought during COVID, when nobody was outside, how much we yearned for this nevuah to come forth. And they looked at Rabbi Akiva and they said, what? And he said, if the first nevuah could come true, that Shualim, that the foxes could go there, if one nevuah could come true, then surely the second nevuah is going to come true. And Yeshvu Zekanim v'Zekanos. They said, Akiva Nichamtani. You have gone ahead and you have comforted us. After Nechama doesn't really mean comfort. If you check through Tanakh, it means to change one's perspective. You've changed our perspective of being abandoned, of being forsaken by Kadosh Baruch Hu, that Yeshvu, there'll come a fine time. Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 Talmidim. He wasn't a young man. He first started learning when he was 40 years old. And what was he going to do? He turned around and he started and he went ahead and he found and he worked with 5 Talmidim. All the Torah that we have, in the Mir, in the Brisk, in Lakewood, in Montreal, any place you name in the world where this Torah comes from Rabbi Akiva's 5 Talmidim. V'haya olam shamein. It was desolate when the 24,000 died, but he took 5 and he rebuilt. We know the Lag BaOmer celebrates 2 things that look a little bit opposite. The fact that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim stopped dying, which you understand now, they all died. It's just a village rebuilt. And the other one is about Rishon Bar Yochai. That he was nifter on Lag BaOmer, and he went ahead and he was Megala. He revealed some of the deepest secrets of Torah. He went ahead and he wrote the Zohar and he shared that before he died. And that's what all those bonfires, because it was illumination in the world of Torah that happened the day before he died. The day that he died on Lag BaOmer, right before he died, he shared that. It's not just accidental. Nothing in life is coincidental. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the 5 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000, and from the 5 that he went to build, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was Megala, who revealed the deepest secrets of Zohar for us, was one of his 5 Talmidim. We don't understand the Kadosh Baruch Hu's way, and what's revealed is to us, and it's Torah Hashem Elokeinu. But to see the ability, Rabbi Akiva picked up and went forward. They picked up and he moved along. And from those 5, which number-wise doesn't really equate 24,005, but what we receive from those 5 is tremendous. I want to move back to the first Beis Hamikdash, and a similar story, but less popular. The story I want to share is about Yirmiyahu, before the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. Yirmiyahu told people to do tshuva. He said, the Eibush is going to be sending a Churban. It's going to be destroyed, and they're going to come, and there's going to be horrific tragedies for Klal Yisrael. And Tzidkiyahu Melech didn't like what he was hearing. He felt it's unnerving the people. So he put Yirmiyahu in jail. When Yirmiyahu was in jail, he received the word of Hashem. Hashem spoke to him and said to him, your cousin, I don't know if it's a cousin or uncle, the Chilukei Deis who it was, the man's name is Hanamel. Hanamel is going to come into jail to see you. And he's going to give you a deed to buy a piece of land in Anatot, in the place where is our chelak of our shevet. Because when you sell a piece of land, it was always good to sell to a relative and kept it within the family, within the shevet, in the locale there. And he says that when he comes to you, you're to purchase that piece of land. In the jail, you're to drop a deed. Whatever money you have, you'll pay him for that deed to buy that piece of land. You're going to call the other inmates that they should bear witness to this purchase of land. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to take that deed and put it in an earthenware jar and you're going to save it. And Yirmiyahu was like, Eretz Yisrael is about to be overturned. He had nevuah about the churban, what's about to happen. buying a piece of land. It's not that it was cheap and a great investment, let's have it. It was a matter of, where are we going to be in the next few years? What's going to happen? How can this be? And we actually heard this Haftarah a few weeks ago, and it ended with, Hayipalei Hashem Davar. Is anything impossible for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Is anything going to elude Hashem that he can't do? He can do it all, but in the darkest time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Yirmiyahu, with all the nevuah, of all the horrific things, and we all hear our Eicha, we all know our Tisha B'Avs, some from Tisha B'Av and some from life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, buy property, buy a piece of land. We're going to be back there one day. We'll all be back there one day. Buy that piece of land and put it in an earthenware jug. When Yirmiyahu went to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu about Klai, so maybe things could be changed. We know for Shemona Esrei it says, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. Sometimes we're pained, and it's hard for us to say certain words or connections to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's nothing new. The Never Yirmiyahu said, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. I can't say Hanora. I just can't say awesome. I can't say it. I see too much in front of me. And he left it out, his davening. He said, Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor. And he left out Hanora. And then came Daniel by the first base of Mikdash destruction, like Yirmiyahu a little bit later, and he said, I see the children being taken hostage. I see the children being tortured. We all know Al Naras Bavel Sham Yashavnu Gabachinu. I see children being taken and tortured. And Daniel said, I can't say Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. I can't say Hagibor. Where's a Gibor if the children are being taken? And they both left out a compliment, a description that we owe HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the good he does do for us. If it wasn't for his kindness, we wouldn't be here. It's not logical that we're all here today. And yet in that deep, deep sorrow, each of these Nevi'im, each of these great tzaddikim couldn't give full Shevach to Hashem. Perhaps that shows us that we're human, we all are, from everyone around, from our greatest Nevi'im to where we are today. And then came Anshe Knesset Hadolah, the men of the Great Assembly, and they said, no, we're going to put it into our davening. And every day when we daven, we say Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora. We say all of it. And we're told that they are called Anshe Knesset Hadolah, the men of the Great Assembly, because they went ahead and put those words in. 1 second, they made brachos. They made Shemona Esreis. They made takanas and siyagim. They gave us so much to live by. Why are they called the men of the Great Assembly? Why are they called the men of the Great Assembly for maybe Shemona Esrei? Maybe for the brachos, maybe for all the things they've done. They're called the men of the Great Assembly, Anshe Knesset Hadolah, because they put those words back in. They said, we can go forward. And perhaps to understand, a Dovie gets a vision from Hashem. He gets it in a box. That's what he has. And that's what he has to say. The Anshe Knesset Hadolah were able to step back as the Chachamim, Lahavin Davar Mitoch Davar, to understand in a different view, in a different vision. And they put it in. So it's hard to give all that shevach when something's difficult about us. It's hard. We're not the first ones to find it hard. And yet, there's a movement to go forward. There's what to thank and what to appreciate, and what to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and move along. And yet it's hard. And yet compliments were missing. And yet there were Talmidim that were taken from us. And with all that, there's a celebration of being able to go forward. At the end of Sefer Nevi'im, of Nevi'im Achronim, it's Malachi. Malachi says, Zichru Torah Moshe Avdi, the number Nevi'im. Klai, what you need to go forward is to remember the Torah of Moshe. But we know when Nevi'im speaking to you. Over the Torah, take a look inside, they'll direct you. That's where you have to go. At the end of Malachi, he says, I'm going to send you Eliyahu Navi one day. Hashem is going to send us before the great day of HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes, and he'll tell us Mashiach's on his way. That's the end of Tanakh. That's the end of Torah and Nevi'im. Ksuvim opens up with Megillas Rus. You have the 5 Megillas, and you have Tehillim there. Megillas Rus opens up, Vayihi b'nei Shvot HaShoftim. Actually, I heard that it was asked on why it starts with a Vav, but the fact that it follows is because when the Nevi'im Achronim ends, basically Nevi'im Achronim is different than Rishonim, it talks about Musar and Tochacha. It talks about telling us off what we've done wrong. The last of those books ends with Malachi, And it follows, it feeds into Ksuvim, which is Rus, which is the beginning of the story of Mashiach. It's about Rus and Boaz and Oved and Yishai and David and Shlomo, and it's leading into Mashiach. As soon as that last sefer ends, with all the tochach and rebuke, it's immediately followed by the story that feeds us into Mashiach. It doesn't leave us hanging for too long. The pain is there, the sorrow is there, the stretch and growth is there. But Akash Baruch Hu wants us not to fall too deep. Like the Omer that we celebrate, everyone died. But there is an ability for Rabbi Akiva to pick up. I want to end with a reading from the Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis. It says, Mi haya mechakel Avram Avinu, Avram and Sarah, she'uza Canaan, she'yoled lahem ben. Mi mechakel means, who would have anticipated that Avram and Sarah, that were so old, would actually have a child? It goes on to say, Mi mechaka, who would have anticipated the Yaakov she'avar b'maklo hayarden, that Yaakov who passed the Yarden with a stick, poor as anything, cheated out of everything he had. She afrots for Yashir, they become one of the richest people around. Mi mechaka, who could have anticipated that Yosef, she'aru alav kol tzarot, Yosef had all those tragedies around him his whole life. This is a book of so much challenge and tragedy, that he would be Melech. Mi mechaka, who could have imagined that Moshe Rabbeinu, Shalshlach Liyar, that was tossed into the Yar as a child in a little basket to float there. Sheyeh Moshe Niyeh, they become the great Moshe he was. Mi mechaka, who would imagine that Ruth Shaita Geira, who would imagine that Ruth, who was a princess from Jordan, she actually was the daughter of Eglo Melech Moab, the big man who gets off his throne, his big Russia, he's going to be stabbed because he's from Russia. His daughter is Rus. And her sister was Arpa, not too great. Okay, who would have imagined that this Giores would go ahead and Shachazra Malchus Yisrael, and she become the Ima Shal Malchus, the mother of royalty of Klal Yisrael. David, she had Melech Atzav Kol Doros. Who would imagine David, who was despised by his brothers, who was the least important among his family, would go ahead and become Melech Al Kol Yisrael, together for generations, for eternity. Yisrael, B'mei Haman, she is Sileim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who could imagine that Klal Yisrael in the days of Haman would have been saved? Okay, I'm not going to get emotional, but who would imagine that the Gullahs we went through should be such a glory sitting around today? The people that didn't imagine in their wildest dreams coming where they're coming from, that we'd be sitting where we are today. Baruch Hashem, Hod Hashem, Ki Tov. Mi mechaka, who could have anticipated that? And now, Mi mechaka, who can anticipate the Sukkos David HaNofelos, that the base of Mikdash and the Malchus of David HaMelech, that's not yet up. Shekimena HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he will bring it up. Shnei Amar, as it says in Amos, Bayam Hahu, Akim Sukkot David. Shu Kol Halam, not just Christ, Kol Halam, Agudah Achat, will all be one unit. Ki Az Hafach, it says in Tzefania, Ki Az Hafach, El Amin, Safa Bura Likro Kulam B'Shem Hashem, L'Avdo Shem Echad, that we will all turn together to serve Akash Baruch Hu, not just Christ, but the whole entire world, the Safa Achat. So as we walk away from Unbroken Faith, it's real. There is Unbroken Faith. We may be broken at times, but there's unbroken faith. And we should be zocheh to go forward from Lag BaOmer with the message of being able to rebuild and continue as we've done in the past, so what we've gone to in the future, and to be zocheh to be Mashiach B'Meir Yameinu very soon.